Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org, for more info, or you can email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have August Lageman. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Shamanism in the 21st Century. Available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or if you guys want to get everything that August has to offer, do yourself a favor and go directly to his personal site, augustlightworker.com. There, not only will you be able to find more information on August himself, you'll find more information on this book, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the Amazon page for purchasing. So one more time, that's augustlightworker.com. August was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, Parchment Global Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, move it through Parchment. You can find them at parchmentglobalpublishing.com. And guys, listen, it is an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that we have August here on the line because he's done the research. He's gone to school for it. He's actually going to be able to give us the proper education on how shamanism is an ancient healing methodology used to heal pain of all magnitude, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, it doesn't matter. You are able to utilize this methodology to overcome the pain in which you are encountering. So without further ado, let's bring him here with us. August, first and foremost, thank you very much for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
You're very welcome.
Now, August, before we jump into your book, let's hold off slightly. Start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, my background, I first started to become interested in shamanism as an undergraduate. Mircea Eliade wrote a book called The Archaic Techniques of Ecstasy, which was his introduction. He was a Romanian who emigrated to this country. And that piqued my interest in shamanism. Shamanism has been around well over 40,000 years. And I became interested in shamanism. My background is military. I was, as a young 19, 20-year-old, I was in the U.S. Marine Corps and did Marine Corps Reserve, and that was my initial background in terms of the military. When I finished that tour, I got out of the Marine Corps, was honorably discharged, and then I went and finished college and went to seminary. And then when I finished seminary, I was doing some parish ministry work. And so I was serving the congregation, and one of the members of the congregation was the Adjutant General in the state of Maryland. And he said, "We need chaplains." And I said, I don't know. I was a little hesitant. And he said, "Well, this time you're going to be an officer." And so he said, "If you don't like the way they're talking to you, you can write a letter of resignation, turn around, salute the officer, and walk out." I said, "Wow, that's a different perspective." So I was commissioned as a first lieutenant in the United States Army, and then I worked my way up over the next 25 years until I was discharged 25 years later as a full colonel with the United States Army. And one of the things that interested me, particularly in the Army career, I was not a combat officer. I was a chaplain. So I didn't shoot anybody. I didn't have any combat experience. But I did work with a lot of soldiers who had been in combat experience. And so one of the jobs I had had an interesting title. I was the re-civilization officer in Vilseck, Germany. And this was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and soldiers would come out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and what they would do is they would attend my classes, and I was essentially charged with deprogramming them so that they didn't go home and do combat things with family members. Well, so I noticed something was happening. When that was happening, some of these people were American Indians. Well, they never came to my classes. They always had a waiver. And what they did is took 2 weeks leave and came back to the United States. When they came back from their 2 weeks in the United States, I found something very fascinating. They didn't have an ounce of PTSD. They had been to their medicine man, their shaman, and he had worked it out of them. So I became very curious about that, and so that's what really got me started. And when I was discharged as a full colonel, then what I did was I sought my own healing. I had what was called secondary PTSD because I didn't shoot anybody, didn't kill anybody, but what I found is that I absorbed some of the stories that I had been told by some of the snipers and scouts and various people that I'd worked with. And so once I was on my own, I sought the help of 2 Cherokee Indian medicine women and a 3rd Sioux Indian medicine women for my own healing. And so what I did is I worked with them individually, and then all of them said, "You have a healing heart. Why don't you become a shaman?" And that hadn't occurred to me before then, but now it was front burner. So shamanism is often based on a tribal religion. For example, North American Indians have shamans, but they're generic to that tribe, so to speak, okay? So I went to a workshop up in upstate New York and met a man named Alberto Villotto, who is head of the Four Winds Society. And he was a PhD in neuropsychology. He was a brilliant man. And he was a Cuban-American, and he demonstrated how shamans heal. And I became very fascinated with how they heal. And he would actually do the healings in the class. So that's, make a long story short, that was my way into it.
Now, what did you find that made you want to put this information into a book and put it out for the public to partake in as well? What inspired you to do that?
Well, my clients were always asking questions. You know, they would come here to my home, and they would get individual healings, and that was fine. But they would often ask a lot of questions. And so I became inspired to write the book and really answer the questions that most people have about shamanism. And so I did.
There you have it. August, listen, without further ado, let's jump into the book specifically. Shamanism in the 21st Century. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the first a couple chapters were difficult for me to write because they had to deal with my own childhood and my own upbringing. And there were bumps on the road, but actually those bumps on the road were really a source of healing for me. And so what I began to do is explore the different ways in which my tradition, the Four Winds, heals people. And I write about that in the book. I talk about it and tell stories about it and so forth and so on. And the interesting thing about that is I kept working with the individuals and finding out where they're stuck, where they're hung up, where they can't heal. And the other thing that is kind of generic, and I'd like the listeners to know about this, the shamanism is not talk therapy. You don't talk about it like if you go to a place and get talk therapy, you may end up talking about your war wounds for years. Okay, what happens in terms of shamanism, for example, people get on my healing table, and one of the things I do is read their energy field. And their energy field consists of where the wounds are, where the PTSD is. The four major parts are heart, head, stomach, and genitals, although they can be in other places. And what I do then, when they're on the table, is I get my pendulum out, an amber pendulum, and I put it in a counterclockwise spin. And if the PTSD is in the head, I turn it in a counterclockwise direction to remove it. And it's that simple.
Fantastic.
If you know what you're doing.
Well, that's the caveat, right? That's the caveat.
So healing PTSD, and veterans that come in here say, "Do I have to talk about it?" No, I don't want to hear it. I've heard it all before, and let me put you on the table, do the healing ritual. The initial healings I do are rituals of release, illuminations and extraction and a clearing of your house. Okay, so I do that, and then I release the negative energy in you, like the PTSD and whatever other forms of negative energy there are. I also clear the house out because you don't want to heal a person and put them back in a toxic environment, a toxic house. So then I do the ritual release on the table. And when they finish that, they get off the table and go sit down on the sofa, and I pull up a chair next to them, and we talk about what's going on. Generally, the conversations afterwards are significantly different than they were before. They don't have a lot of questions. They just feel better. Something has been released. Something that's been gnawing at them for a long time is gone.
Again, here in the line with August Lageman. We're discussing his fantastic book, Shamanism in the 21st Century, available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or directly through his personal site, augustlightworker.com. Now, August, I'm curious, articulate to our listening audience, in addition to the education in which you've received, what type of research did you do in preparation for this book?
I went over all my notes from all of my clients over the years. I've been practicing as a shaman for over 12 years. And what I found is certain commonalities, certain things that happened over and over again. And that's where I got the gist for the book. And the book covers a lot of ground and tells, a lot of stories, for example. And some of it is really quite outside the medical realm. There's a story in the book, for example. I was training a guy as a shaman, and he called me up one day and he said, there's a 1-year-old boy in a pediatric intensive care 60 miles from here, and I have his parents' permission for you to work on him. I said, okay. So the kid had a temperature of 106. Well, I'm not medically trained, but you're going to damage your brain at that temperature. Okay, so what I did is I pulled the baby in remotely, his energy field in remotely, and what I found is his chakras, his 7 energy centers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, were all down. So I took my pendulum out, I did a counterclockwise spin, and I cleared the negative energy out of all 7 of them. Then what I did is went back and, with a clockwise spin, rebooted the chakras, and that's what I did. And I called my friend, and I said, I think the kid will be perking up quite a bit. So he called me a day later and said, the doctor is amazed. His temperature has dropped from 106 to 100.
Wow.
And if it continues to drop, they're going to discharge him from the hospital. I said, good. So what I did was beyond simple in terms of shamanism. Your energy centers were not working, so your energy is not going to be working very well, okay? But once I cleared them and rebooted them, it came back to life.
That is absolutely incredible. August, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting prior to embarking upon the journey?
The interest that people have in it, they want to learn more about. They're not just satisfied that I healed them. They want to know what's the ins and outs of it and how is this done. And there's a lot of things in the book. For example, something in the book, there's a chapter in the book about animals. Well, animals don't have 7 chakras, they have 5. All right. So some people are very much endeared to their animals. And so what I do is work on healing their animals. I can heal them remotely. I can, do a lot of things.
What more can be stated? I mean, the tips offered within the book are absolutely remarkable. And as I stated when we first started this interview, just having something as an additional resource to be able to pull from is really what makes this book so powerful. I know the majority of you are already at his Amazon page. I know you already went to his personal website and you're looking into purchasing the book as we speak. But for everybody else, I'm going to re-impress it for you one last time. Here on the line with August Lageman. We just finished discussing his fantastic book, Shamanism in the 21st Century, available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or directly through his personal site, augustlightworker.com. Let's grow, let's develop, let's educate ourselves. And let's start with this fantastic narrative. August, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for the education that you've been able to relay to all of us, myself included. And once again, thank you for being a guest on People of Distinction.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to have been here.